The Warriors just had their worst home loss in the Steve Kerr era. Celtics beat them by 40. It's a pivotal point of the season. Warriors have guys banged up. We don't know 100% what they could be. What should they be? Let's talk about it.
Who can stop Steph Curry?
Hopefully we'll never find out.
There's not many defenses in the world that can stop him.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, what is the good one, everyone? We are getting a lot of comments on that intro saying we found out what can stop Steph Curry. It's not having good players around him. The Warriors 21-21 on the season. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. Also joined by Dan Devone today, who currently works for 95.7 The Game. Also a 4-time Emmy Award winner at Fox in Seattle. I worked at CBS. No Emmys to my name, but the career is still young, my friends. The career is still young. This is Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can check out the show on YouTube, wherever you get your audio podcasts. And it's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Let's get right into this thing, Devone. We're going to talk about the ceiling for 2025. Should the Warriors go younger or older? Chuck Barkley and Kenny the Jet had a conversation on the TNT halftime show that I want to explore. I want to debate a pivotal point of the season. What are the Warriors going to do in the homegrown talent, the Kumingas of the world, the Moses Moody's, the Pajimskis, the Trace Jackson Davises? James Wiseman's already gone, but the last 5-6 drafts, what do we think of this thing as they now get a little bit older? We get a little bit more time to watch them, and it changes every day. My opinion changes every day. So let's start with the 2025 season, Devone. Warriors 21-21, looking like a play-in team at best, but they're banged up right now. Is this team better than they've shown? Are they worse than they've shown? Or are they just average?
They're not good. They're not. This is not a good basketball team.
Not even average.
No, not even average. And the record indicates that. Not hating on the Warriors, but if you were to remove the 12-3 start, which I think now we can all say was a bit of an outlier, an aberration. I think even at the time, living in that moment, a lot of us were like, yeah, this is amazing, man. We all bought in, but it was just the one thing that we continue to say is, does it have legs? Does it have sustainability? Is this something that we'll be talking about or could carry you through the 6 months of the battle of attrition that is the 82-game schedule of the NBA? And I think we got our answer. This team over its last, 25 games is 8-17. That's more of who the Golden State Warriors are. I think that body of work at this juncture of the season is more of a signature of where this team is at. I don't know if it's Kenny Smith. I don't know if it's Charles Barkley. But yeah, I'm stripping this down to the studs. I've sort of leaned this way all along, that I know people hate the rebuild word. Maybe you can sugar it and call it a transition, a reset. But time's running out, because you can't do this and you've got to take a swing. You've got to take a huge swing while you still have some assets. I'll just leave it there, but we can dive a little bit more into it if you want.
Yeah, no, we're going to get into the future. And quite frankly, if the season continues to go this way, we're going to be talking about the future and hypotheticals. Hypothetical season's going to come early for the next few months if they're not in contention as the season moves along. But as of right now, they are in contention. If the season were to end today, they'd be hovering right around that play-in tournament. In fact, the exact position on Tuesday would be tied with the Phoenix Suns for that last spot in the play-in tournament. So as of today, the Warriors would have a chance when the postseason rolls around, but still a lot of basketball to be played. But let's assume Kuminga and Pajimski and Draymond Green, everyone's back healthy, and they can finally sustain a little bit of cohesion where everyone's on the floor at the same time. Because let's get real, the last month or two, it seems like this guy's out, that guy's out, Wiggins is out, Curry's missing a game, here's Draymond out for a few games, Pajimski's been gone for a while, breaks his nose at the beginning of the season, Pajimski's back, Pajimski's gone, Melton's gone for the season. Like, it's always moving pieces. We can never get any sort of consistency. And look, that's the NBA in a nutshell, but specifically with this Warriors team, it is bad right now. When this team is at full strength, do you think that they can finish in that top 10 and we have something to look forward to come playoff time? Maybe a we believe, or is this thing only going to continue to sputter downward?
You're circling the drain. I'll answer it for you. Yeah, maybe you sneak in as a 10, and then what? You go early exit to OKC.
So what if they get Vooch? What if they, and look, he's not the answer to all the Warriors' problems, but he is better than what they have right now in terms of
What if they get who?
offense. Vucevic from the Bulls, 20 and 10.
Oh my goodness. I don't mean to laugh, but this idea of just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic is just silly. I mean, playing around at the fringes is just not going to get it done. It's an improvement, but what is it going to do for you? Does that mean you're going to beat OKC? Are you going to make a serious run? It's just not going to happen. You could talk about a best case scenario of bringing all those players back. Podziemski's healthy, whom I like. I love Trace Jackson Davis. Give me the Warriors at full strength. Steph Curry, Draymond Green. You still are clearly inferior when you think about the young talent that is the Western Conference, and especially when you're talking about those top 6 teams. I would even say the top 8 teams. The Warriors can't match up personnel for personnel. I think, and I say this on 95.7 all the time, and people go nuts, but you're looking at it the wrong way. Everybody's looking forward. Now, listen, we go on a win streak. We've got this home court advantage over the last couple of games in the next month. We can get into the thick of things. We maybe can catch the Lakers. Maybe we get in as a 5 seed. No, you're headed in the wrong direction. Look in the rearview mirror, because that's where you want to go. You want to go backwards. You know where you're at? You're 4.5 or 5 games away from the lottery. That's where you need to be. You want to put yourself in a position where you have a 26% chance of getting one of the top 4 picks. You want to put yourself in a position where you're actually at the plate for Cooper Flag. Granted, it's going to be 3 or 4%, but I harken back to New Orleans, who had a 3% chance at one Zion Williamson. Now we can talk about that in detail, but they landed the big fella. So that's where you want to go. This idea of middling and Vucevic or
purgatory.
Healthy, stop middling. Get to the plate and make a swing. You got to get draft picks. And I'll tell you what, well, I'll reserve this, but there's some guys that you got to sell right now while you still have some market value.
We'll discuss that coming up. We're going to get into the homegrown talent, the pivotal point. Here's the deal with where the Warriors stand right now. Everyone knows it, that in order for the Warriors to move forward, they have to pull the plug on something, whether it's Draymond, whether it's Wiggins, whether it's Kerr. It's probably not going to be Curry, but one of those 3, they got to pull the plug on something, or they are just kind of stuck, unless Dan Devone has another way that maybe they can shape this roster. We're going to talk about it coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Forget that. We champs. Why are you starting with that question? We got 4 championships.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. I love going to live events, sports, music, theater, comedy. And Game Time makes it easier to get your tickets for your favorite events with Game Time picks. It features and filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. The closer you get to your event, the cheaper the tickets get. Procrastinators, we say thank you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Devone?
Game time, baby.
It is game time.
I don't give a damn about no damn Drake night.
All right. So the Golden State Warriors, younger or older, it's a debate that's going to be talked about for as long as the Warriors stay the way that they are. And it's still that 2 timeline mentality where you have all the young players from the recent drafts and you have NBA champions. You have Looney, you have Peyton, you have Wiggins, you have I guess you could say Kuminga, Moody. You got tons of NBA champions on this team. Let's not get that wrong. But you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the core. Charles Barkley and Kenny the Jet had just an interesting conversation, a debate on the TNT halftime show when the Warriors were getting smoked by the Celtics and ended up losing by 40, the worst home loss in the Steve Kerr era. Kenny started it off and said, this team needs to get younger. They need to get faster. They need to whip the ball around quicker. This is a different identity than the Lakers. The Lakers need to build through veterans around LeBron James, who needs the ball in his hands at all times, and you need to make the pieces fit. You can change the deck chairs on the Titanic if you're the Lakers. Unfortunately, they're just kind of stuck with where they are in terms of assets, capital, all that sort of thing. With the Warriors, he said they need to get younger. They need to get faster. Curry's moving off the ball at all times, so you need to find ways to get him open, aka maybe some youngsters that are bigger, that can play down on the block, and you can go inside out. Some more tenacious slashers, not a Buddy Hield, but someone that can actually keep you honest and collapse defenses and kick it out to Curry, that sort of thing. Play in transition more. Kerr's talked about it. Get out on the run, find Curry on the run. Just change the style of what it's been. And what it has been is stale. And what does Charles do? Barkley comes in and says, "You're a knucklehead." He says, "No, Kenny, what they need to do is they need to get a star." Everyone uses this word star. And he threw out the name Jimmy Butler is his potential star. He's like, just go get Jimmy Butler. And I know Devone's pulling out his hair because you've been saying this for a long time. You agree with Kenny. The Warriors need to get younger. How do they get younger? And why haven't they decided to get younger yet?
Well, it's a mistake on their part. They should have traded Klay Thompson before he became an unrestricted free agent in order to be a real good GM, to be a Sam Presti, or to be able to make decisions and personnel moves 2 steps ahead of everybody else. You can't wait and hold on to these players and now say, okay, well, what do we do? Any buyers out there? Everybody knows that you're selling at this point. It's almost too late for the Warriors. And this is why they always say dynasties don't end well. There's a couple of reasons why. One of which is sentimentality and the fact that you have this loyalty to Klay Thompson. You waited until he's an unrestricted free agent. You didn't get anything for him. You should have dealt him while you recognized that the wheels were coming off and he wasn't a fit. The same thing with Draymond Green. Draymond Green now, they'll look to move Draymond, although they may not publicly display as much. But I just don't know what you're going to get in return. But they should have made that move, again, a year or two ago. This is a team that clearly is not a player away. It's not Paul George or Lauri Markkanen or Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, first of all, doesn't give a rip about the regular season. And this team isn't going to the postseason. And it's not going to make a run. It's not a fit for Jimmy Butler. Not to mention, what are you going to do when he wants to max out at the end of the season? That another 35-year-old in an already aging team. Come on, Charles, man. What are you talking about? That doesn't apply to the Warriors. That's not even worth commenting on. But to Kenny's point,
young man's league. This is a young.
How do you get young? Well, first of all, when Steph Curry says, we can't compromise the future in the future, we talk about these young players. I'm not necessarily convinced that they're assets yet. They might be. Trace Jackson Davis might be that guy. Pajemski, are we thoroughly convinced? Is it similar to what Houston has when you talk about their boys and their horses that are young? Is it similar to what Memphis has? When you talk about OKC,
and
those are young players.
Yeah, no, these are tradable assets if they gave you the value in return. But as of right now, the issue is, who are you going to bundle all those guys together for?
Well, I'm looking to move Draymond, and here's the name. All right, this is where,
I already know
where we've reached. Yeah,
and I was go with a different power forward, aren't you?
Well, no, I would listen. I never wanted to feed this beast. I hate going here. But if Orlando calls me and says, what does it take to get Steph? We're going to give you four number ones. We're going to give you some of our young pieces. If you're Dunleavy, do you not at least listen? Do you not? The idea that we can't touch Steph, if you want to get old and die together, that's fine. You're going to win 11 games for the next 10 years. That's fine. But at some point, and listen, he'll always be remembered as a Warrior. Kevin Garnett's a Boston Celtic. He's not going to be remembered as a Brooklyn Net. Michael Jordan.
I remember him as a Minnesota Timberwolf.
Yeah. Well, the point being is that Joe Montana is not a Kansas City Chief. He's a San Francisco 49er. So this idea that you can't do this to Steph, if you really want to be hard, and business is hard, right? This is ruthless at the end of the day. If you really want to improve, and if there is one ace you might have up your sleeve that could bring back what it is that you need, where you're at as the Golden State Warriors in terms of trying to get young and compile draft picks and go in that direction and get excited about tomorrow, I think you have to entertain whatever it is that somebody's willing to offer for Steph Curry.
You look at smart moves over the years, and I look at two with the, one with the Thunder, one with the Clippers. Let's go back to last year. Clippers decide not to invest more in Paul George, an aging star, and they say, we're just going to hand over the keys to Norman Powell. Wise decision, right? Very wise decision, not extending Paul George in that situation. A few years prior, the Oklahoma City Thunder say, we're going to blow it up. We're not good enough. we're trading Paul George for a bunch of first-round picks, and guess who we're going to get back in return? A young player that's talented, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's now one of the faces in the league. You can go back decades to before the Pistons had their little run at championships. They traded away Jerry Stackhouse for a young player named Rip Hamilton. Sometimes that's what it takes. My issue is I don't want it to be Curry, right? I want him retiring in a Golden State Warriors jersey. Draymond Green is the name that gets brought up because Draymond Green is a guy that if you pulled the plug on this thing, you would look to three people. You would look to Draymond Green, you would look to Steve Kerr, and you would look to, I guess you could say, expiring contracts like Looney and Payton, because I don't think trading Andrew Wiggins really does anything at this point. I think Wiggins is on a team-friendly deal. He's a good player. He's not your issue. He's still relatively young at 29. So if you want to talk about getting younger, it's not trading Andrew Wiggins. It's trading the guy that, isn't on the floor a lot of the times the last few seasons and is maybe his game isn't replaceable. Look, there's not going to be another Draymond anytime soon, but you could find another power forward that can affect your team and can just allow you to move on. But the issue is, what does Draymond net you in return? And would the Warriors actually do that? Because per Anthony Slater, it doesn't sound like that's even on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's why you might have to package him with Andrew Wiggins, and I'm with you. You don't want to move Wiggins. He's been, along with Steph Curry, your most consistent player this year. I mean, he's been a reclamation project after what we've witnessed the last couple of seasons. I think that Draymond could help somebody if somebody's looking at this exclusively through winning the title this year, and he puts you over the top because of what it is that he provides for a team, especially if you're one of those younger teams that I mentioned that lead the Western Conference. He could be the difference maker. I would definitely entertain all of those things. You've got to take a swing. You've got to get to the plate while you still have some assets. Don't get old and die together, because that is the quicker you recognize that it's time to hit reset and sell this thing, the quicker you return to prominence. If you want to play this game where you're straddling the fence, it's a recipe for disaster. So while you still have somebody out there that's interested in Draymond, I would sure as hell listen to whatever it is that somebody's willing to give me. And I told you, I think I texted you from New York. I said, I'm in on Zion. That's the sort of swing I'm talking about. Zion, I know, scares the hell out of everybody. And it should. It should, because he's been hurt at every facet of his career, going back to high school, to college, his first day in the NBA. He's hurt all the damn time. But it's clear that those two need a separation, right? New Orleans needs to move off on him, and Zion needs a new. If you hit on Zion, all right, you hit
got
on
your cornerstone. You got your cornerstone. You probably bottom low.
And you got 24-year-old star. And I always say this about Zion Williamson. In my lifetime, there are three guys that you can't stop in the paint. And I mean, in the history of this damn league, one is Giannis, the other is Shaq, and the other is, that's right, Zion Williamson. He's going left, but he's still getting to a spot. You get that guy, then I think it was Steph and Jonathan Kuminga. You get into the lottery, you start building. Suddenly, you might be 500 next year, but suddenly the year after that begins to be a little bit more appealing. You need to create an identity. Right now with this basketball team, when Steph last week says, listen, I think we can't compromise the future and be rash, and I'm paraphrasing here, and make any sort of trades, and everybody interpreted that as like he's waving the white flag, and then the next day he had to clarify and say, no, I'm as competitive as anybody. To me, that was him screaming at the mountains along with everybody else in that Warrior team and all the executives and the powers that be saying, we have no identity. We don't know what the hell we are. We're not sure if we're compromising the future. We're not sure if we're matching timelines. We don't know how Steph fits into any of this. Well, I can tell you right now, it's time to take a swing. And the swing is either move Steph or Draymond, get a Zion, but you got to do something, because this does not work. This is a recipe for disaster.
Let's continue this conversation coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Here's how I feel. It's about winning basketball games.
All right, so Zion Williamson.
I knew you wouldn't let that go.
I'm going right into it, man, because it's intriguing, and it doesn't sound like the Warriors actually have any interest in him, so I don't want to spend more than like 45 seconds on it. But what the Warriors need to do to get back into contention sooner rather than later, and if you actually want to see Steph have one on his thumb in a Golden State Warriors jersey, I think there's literally one move out there that can potentially get it done. and it's hitting up New Orleans and saying, hey, what do you want for Zion Williamson? It doesn't appear to be working out. We have some young assets on our team if you're interested in any of them. We also have a ton of draft capital. If you want to hit the reset button and build around some of the players that you already have, that to me, because I agree with you. I think the marginal pieces, I don't think it hurts going after a Vooch. I mean, at the end of the day, we've seen what first round picks can become if you're picking in the middle of, right after the lottery. A lot of times it's nothing. You get Nico Mannion. You never hear from him again. Although I don't think was he even a first round pick?
Yeah. He's the man in Italy these days. He's a wildcat.
Yeah, that he is. But I'm just saying, you get picks all the time that turn into nothing. The Warriors were at a crossroads years ago where they had an opportunity to go out and get Drew Holiday from the Pelicans, give away some first-round picks that ended up being Wiseman, Moody, and Kuminga. You could have had an Olympian. You could have had your scrappy point guard in Drew Holiday, and they decided to go with the two timelines and hang on to their draft capital. What are they going to do this time? Because you can do it entirely through the draft, or you can package together some of those draft picks with an older player and get back not only some youth in the process of guys that have opportunities to grow in your system, but you can also get back some other, draft capital, tying it together and just kind of pick swapping and trading. And look, Devone, it's all confusing right now because it does feel like the Warriors have no direction. What I'm trying to get at is what is the direction with the homegrown talent that they have? They still have to sign Jonathan Kuminga. All signs have pointed to nothing. I mean, all signs have pointed to we have no idea what the Warriors think about Jonathan Kuminga. He's still on the team at this point, which makes me think that they'll give him an offer when that time comes. They extend Moses Moody, but he doesn't get a ton of playing time. Where does he fit into the mix? Trace Jackson-Davis is a very serviceable four. I don't see him as a center in this league, and the Warriors don't have that center. They struck out trying to get one with Wiseman. What the hell's going on with the young players here? How truly valuable are they?
I don't know. And they're good players, but good doesn't cut it in the Western Conference. That's the problem. When I look at Amon Thompson, when I look at Jalen Green, when I look at those young boys on Houston, when I think about...
When you know, right?
I don't know. I just know that this youthful core, you're right. You should see a lot more from Moses Moody, or at least we should be at a point where we can say definitively as to who he is in year 4. But the fact that the jury's still out and he's still a good player, even with Jonathan Kuminga, they're good players. I don't know whether they're foundational pieces that you build around. And that's the imbalance, is that your younger players are okay, and then your older players are just that. They're old. Steph Curry is still amazing, but at soon to be 37 years of age, you can't rely on him to be an MVP every single night in order for you to win. That's just illogical. So a couple of things. I'm stepping to the plate and I'm swinging. I'm not being done leaving my $5,000 suit and pretending as though I'm this, going politician on you and saying, Zion, oh, come on, this is the Warriors. Zion Williamson. Well, you show me something else, because you're at a point where you have to take a risk there, Mr. Dunleavy. You've got to be a riverboat gambler here. And you may come out, you may lose on Zion Williamson, but you've got to step to the plate. You may be vilified for moving Steph Curry, but you've got to get to the plate and take a swing. This is how GMs make a name for themselves. You can't stay the course, because there's nothing here. As I mentioned, there's no identity on this basketball team.
Look at the Bogut trade years ago. He was considered damaged goods when they brought him in. Warriors fans were booing Lacob for sending out Monte Ellis. That was one of those ballsy decisions that ended up paying off, right? I mean, every decision is. Every team that is where they need to be right now, or mostly, it's because they did something that at some point was considered bold and it paid off. I mean, look at the Mavericks with Kyrie.
Kyrie is having a hell of a year. Have you seen Cooper Flag play?
He's incredible.
This dude is, he's real.
He's incredible. So you're just saying, let's roll out the entire bench warmers. Let's get a lot of Q posts. Let's get some Guy Santos. Let's give ourselves a 10% chance.
No, I'm saying don't tank, but you're going to get there whether it's intentional or otherwise. Steve Kerr is going to coach his ass off every single night, and Steph Curry is going to be Steph Curry. But guess what? You're still going to be in the lottery. That's how bad this team is. I don't think this is a team that's going to a playing game, and I think that this team is headed for the lottery, and I think that's the best thing that can happen to them. This you have to step back and look where it is, and it's so tough for Warrior fans. I get it, Dub Nation, man. I grew up in the city, and you're synonymous with titles, and you're still looking to sort of shoehorn yourself into that conversation. It's done. It's over. It's in the rearview mirror. You have to now identify that next foundation that's going to put you back into prominence and relevance as far as the Western Conference is concerned. Take a look. Take the blinders off. The West is about young fellas that can go. OKC not only is young, but they got more assets than the Golden State Warriors. And you talked about that trade with the Clippers. They still haven't cashed in on those 5 first-round picks. It's ridiculous. And also moving Westbrook. So you've got to think about this in drastic measures, because you need to rebuild and you need to blow it up and you need to be drastic, whatever it is that you do, because that's the only way that you can potentially hit on something that's going to point you in the right direction.
You get a king's ransom if you shipped out Steph Curry, but it just does not appear to be an option right now. Like if you realistically, if you got a notification on your phone February 3rd, it said Magic acquires Steph Curry for 6 first-round picks, Cole Anthony and Franz Wagner. Like, what would your reaction be? You'd be stunned, right? We'd all be stunned. Like, I don't think
you'd be stunned. There's going to be a lot of emotion, but as a GM, just like a business tycoon or anybody else, you have to think about what's best for the Warriors going forward. This isn't about sentimentality. You get passed over if that's where you're at. Emotion cannot factor into these decisions. If this is the only opportunity to give your team a chance in terms of going forward, then you got to pull the trigger, as harsh as that may sound. And I know, look at the Curry fans, I'd love to see this guy stay in a Warrior uniform and win another title, but it's not happening, man.
Dan Devone, you can hear him on 95.7 The Game. What time are you on the airwaves nowadays? You have a set time at this point?
I'll be on, my next show is going to be Saturday. I'll do Warriors this week, and we'll talk about 2 more losses to Sacramento and whoever the hell they got. Chicago. They got Chicago coming up on Friday. So, Warriors are just not a very good basketball. I'd love to see this team turn it around and do well, but that's the worst thing that could happen if they were to make a run right now. Get in that lottery, Warrior fans. Get in that lottery. Get a single-digit draft pick. Things are cyclical in this world. The Warriors have been in the penthouse for so long, just looking down at, Steph shimmying and Draymond giving the middle finger to everybody. Well, sports is comeuppance, man.
There's been one team. There's been one team that's been able to stand the test of time, and it was San Antonio for the Duncan Robinson overlap, and then bringing in Kawhi and bringing in the different assets, switching from Bruce Bowen to Manu Ginobili and that sort of thing. But guess what? They made smart moves in the process for that to happen.
The Warriors remind me, I spent a lot of time in New York. They remind me of somebody who's been in that penthouse in Fifth Avenue, just looking down at everybody for the last 10 years. Let them eat cake. And now, welcome to a studio in Chelsea where you have no plumbing, man. You're down there on the bottom rung of the ladder where Charlotte, Washington, Portland, and it happens in sports. But the reason I say that is because you got to get your arms around it and recognize that's where we belong. Because in order to have direction, the NBA hasn't changed. It's feast or famine. You're either at the top and you're kicking butt, or you're a player 2 away like Dallas or Memphis, and or you're at the bottom saying that's where we need to go. You can't be like the Warriors, void of any sort of identity and not knowing who the hell you are at the end of the day.
Well, maybe they'll do something this offseason. The deadline will go by, and then free agency will come about, and we'll hear more big fish hunting. I'll do the same exact thing that I did last season. Names will be leaked of stars that want to go elsewhere, and nothing will happen, and we'll just have this same roster. They'll extend Looney and Peyton. I don't know at this point. You're right, man. No direction for this Warriors team right now. Me as someone that hosts the show, I'd love to see them win some basketball games, but it is the catch-22. If you start losing, you give yourself a better chance to capture that flag. And like you said, he is a generational type player that can change things in a hurry if he comes in, and he gives you some size that you've been looking for as well. So if things were to hit the fan, then at least we'd have a enjoyable ping pong draft night in June. Dan Devone, 95.7 The Game. Chuck Walter, this is Locked On Warriors. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Peace, everyone.